breaking news of firsthand accounts of people who were on the planes that were sent down to El Salvador that were ultimately returned. So this would be the very first time that we have an actual accounting of what happened on those planes and what happened before they took off. This is a compilation of many sworn affidavits from multiple women who were on those planes, which I will circle back to in a moment. Women are currently in the Laredo, Texas ICE detention center. So according to these affidavits, and these women were not all celled together. So this is multiple stories that are coming in and converging, okay? People were picked up for various things and then sent down to these respective detainment centers. And apparently, repeatedly, they were loaded onto buses, driven one time for like an hour and a half, another time for like a half an hour to the airport. And they were always told that they were being deported back to Venezuela. And during all of this time, they were completely shackled, arms and legs. The first 2 times, they were not loaded onto the planes and they were returned. On the third attempt, which was on March 15th, there were 18 women aboard the bus. 8 of them were taken off of the bus and loaded onto the planes going to El Salvador. And the women who were still on the bus, the 10 women who were returned to the ICE detention center in Texas, of course, they asked, why are we not being put on the plane? Because they wanted to go back to Venezuela. ICE officials said, well, you want to go home, right? And they said, yes. And he said, well, then you should thank God that you're not on that plane because it's not going to Venezuela. So remind yourself that all of these people were shackled, arms and legs, during the duration of this flight, all of the people aboard. They flew for several hours, then they stopped in Guatemala to refuel. Women have signed sworn affidavits saying that the agents aboard the planes were threatening the men and harassing them to sign documents saying that they absolutely were part of Tren de Aragua. If they signed those documents, it would say that they were not entitled to review. After they took off from Guatemala and flew for some additional time, the people on board the plane were trying to take the windows up, trying to look out, and they were instructed not to look out the windows. And apparently the people on the plane were saying, where are we going? And all the officials kept telling them that they were all going to Venezuela. But the people aboard the plane were saying, well, we know what Venezuela looks like. There's one major airport, it's Caracas, and that's not Venezuela. So of course, you can imagine how terrifying this would be. When they landed in El Salvador, the women said that the men were taken off the plane in really, really aggressive and brutal ways, and that the women were never taken off the plane, and that they overheard El Salvadorian officials saying that Bukele wouldn't accept women, that the agreement was written only for men. So they were returned ultimately, and that is where they currently sit in this U.S. detention center in Laredo, Texas. Now, NBC has sent over to Department of Homeland Security, which is, of course, that sits over Immigration and Customs Enforcement, asking them certain questions. Of course, ICE has failed to respond to any of this. Specifically, they were asking about the documents that the men were being asked to sign, affirming that they were a part of Tren de Aragua. And additionally, it should be said that an ICE official in the pleadings that are going on with the Boasberg case have signed sworn statements saying that many of the non-citizens that were taken to El Salvador did not have criminal records. So I wanted to highlight this story. The women's names are, as they have been identified, only 3 publicly. One known as SZFR only. Those were the initials given. Another is Heymar Padilla Moyaton, she's 24, and Scarlett Rodriguez, who is 21, in an interview that they conducted from the prison.